Welcome to the Top Order podcast, episode 2 in recordings from this week, late in November 2024. This is going to be a quick podcast, I'm told, 20 minutes tops. So strap yourselves in for 45 minutes on your commute this morning or evening. We're going to talk this week in cricket. Tim Southee retires after the England series, a debut guaranteed in the Black Caps Test match summer. We'll also talk a little bit of the white ball bonanza and some Champions Trophy drama as well. All coming up on the Top Order podcast. Stay tuned. Well, boys, fresh off the heels of our Border Gavaskar Trophy preview, which is available in very, very long form content in your podcast feed. Where, I'm not going to spoil the predictions, but we think it's going to be a close series, that Border Gavaskar. We're here probably to talk a little bit of, let's say, preview for this New Zealand-England series, but we are going to do a full preview show next week, aren't we, to see whether England have picked up any golfing or bungee jumping incidents down in Queenstown after their warm-up game. And then we are going to talk a little bit, there's so much white ball cricket going on at the moment, New Zealand, Sri Lanka, West Indies, England, Australia, Pakistan, and a bit of India, South Africa as well. And then the unfolding, I suppose, not cricketing, but more political drama around the hosting and who's going to be where in the Champions Trophy. But we are, as I've said often, a New Zealand-based cricket podcast, certainly by weight of residency at the moment. And Tim Southee has announced that this will be his last sort of summer in the white shirt for the Black Caps. So Stu, we have to come to you for your reflections on what's been a long and distinguished career with a bit of silverware in the cupboard as well.
Oh yeah, look, I have many thoughts. Just quickly though, Baldy, were you surprised by this announcement?
No,
neutral.
No, I'm not surprised based on his form, his age, where he's at in his career. I think it's the right time for him to finish up as a Test cricketer.
Yeah, I on reflection and after it happened, or it sort of I got a bit of a heads up that there was going to be an announcement the day before. As soon as I got that heads up and thought, oh, okay, this is probably about Tim Southee. Tim Southee's probably exactly what's just happened. But I still was a little bit surprised. Maybe it's because I think that 400 number, at least in my head, has been a driver for him. Whether it's been personally for him, I have no idea. I'm sure I'm sure a few years ago when he was at his best form and still taking a lot of wickets, I think he might have seen that 431 Test wickets that Richard Hadley's got on his record and thought, maybe I can get there. I'm going so well, but. Yeah, I mean, look, you look at kind of the last couple of years for Southee, and it's hard to say that he, I think I've got some numbers down here. Since the 1st of January 2022, 23 tests, he averages 38 at a strike rate of 74, which I think is probably the more alarming number out of those. But then since the Sri Lanka series in March 2023, it's 19 innings. He's taken 15 wickets at an average of 52. Strike rate's almost 100, and 2 for 46 is his best innings result out of that. So that's a long time to. I'm going to say that's a long time to not be taking wickets and not be taking a bag of wickets or something like that. And I think that we're going to look back. I'm going to come to both of you in a second on terms of sort of the history and where he sort of might sit in the game, but I was so pleased with how he bounced back in that India series after getting a lot of criticism in Sri Lanka. He went to India with after just standing down as captain. There must have been so many thoughts going through his head. We sort of knew that he wasn't going to play every test after that, and I thought he came back so well. His pace picked up, and you saw around the squad what a leader he was in lots of different ways, and the way he even in that opening test against Rohit Sharma sets the tone for the whole series in terms of how we were going to go about that, about how that 3-0 unfolded. So I have so many thoughts, and we'll probably dive into them when he actually does retire. I hope for New Zealand's sake, that this is a dream. It's being pegged as it's going to be after the England series. We hope it's 3-0 for New Zealand in that series, and he goes to the World Test Championship final and can kind of come away from that in such a fairy tale finish. But even if that's not the case, for him to be able to finish against the English, which 17 years ago he started his Test career against, it's pretty remarkable. And I might throw to you guys in terms of Binksy, where do you think he's going to go down in terms of, like, 10 years' time? The rest of the world is going to look at Tim Southee.
Yeah, look, I think I actually draw, and kind of, Baldy can probably help me with this at some point from a statistical perspective. New Zealand play far less tests than, for example, England or India or Australia. I think if we look at the career span that he's had and compare that with someone, I think, and look, I'm not saying for 1 second I think he's a better bowler than James Anderson. I don't. But I think for me, he goes down in that kind of mould. He's been a guy that when he came on to the scene, he had a bit of hustle and bustle and certainly a bit of charisma around him, and bowled, decent pace away swing. He was sharp when he came onto the scene. And then I think, like a Jimmy Anderson, he's had to develop, particularly, and this is no criticism or slight on New Zealand cricket, he had to develop into a bowler that was going to be able to be successful in many different sets of conditions, because you didn't have the bench strength of some of the larger population cricketing nations, and certainly has then gone away and developed some of those skills to be able to winkle out wickets in the subcontinent. Bowlers, his pace has diminished a little bit as well. So look, I actually think he'll go down as a very, very important fixture of your cricketing success through the 2010s, I guess, mainly, and obviously into the 2020s. So look, really, really like him. I think probably I wish his batting would have probably lived up to its early promise. I remember seeing him score. I think I'll get this right. 77 in a T20 game in England for Essex, where he just kept clearing the fence into a stand full of drunk punters on an balmy English summer's evening. And I thought, oh wow, we've got a guy that could be an all rounder here on our hands. So those will be my abiding memories of him. I do want to throw back a question to you, and Baldy may chip in first on his views on Tim Southee, but this is more a generic question, really. We've got this sort of, I suppose, scenario where we've got players either being told they're retiring, or we've got, players planning a stag do, where, I'll have 3 more tests and then I might have another one if we get to the World Championship final. How do we feel about, I suppose, setting those intentions and kind of almost, and look, this is in conjunction with the selectors and the management, right? But almost saying, like, I am good enough to play this series, but then a day after it, I'm not. What do we feel? Yeah, what do we feel about that?
I'll come to that in a second. Do you have anything you want to add on Southee in terms of history? Like, is he going to be a top 100 player now? If you were doing that number again, I mean, obviously putting you on the spot there, but thinking about the kind of some of those guys that were in there, like an Ian Bishop or people like that, who has maybe a better strike rate and a better average, but Southee now has almost 400 wickets.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that you've got to look back on. And in an era where New Zealand didn't play a lot of Test cricket, Tim Southee did play a lot of Test cricket. He made himself available for his country. He prioritised playing Test cricket for his country. He was part of a golden era of fast bowling in New Zealand, where you had Southee, Wagner and Bolt as your 3 best seamers. And probably they're 3 of the best seamers that you've ever had outside of Hadley.
Exactly.
So at least as far as longevity is concerned, but all of them put together very, very impressive statistical careers.
And they complemented each other so well.
They did. And so all of that comes together with Southee's career being better than the numbers would suggest, because of his ability to contribute to success on the field as being part of that fast bowling cohort. So I think the career is not suggestive in terms of his numbers as Hadley's is, or as Anderson's is, or as McGrath's is. Tim Southee has been equally as important as those guys in the success of his national side, without it really jumping off the page at you in the number of fifers, or his average, which is just a touch below 30, or his strike rate, which is a touch below 60. All very good, but don't point to his impact on the New Zealand team as a whole.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he's kind of picking up on both of your points. He's going to go down, when he retires, or currently he's been involved in the most test wins for New Zealand. 46 test wins out of his 104 tests or something, which is a fantastic number. I was looking at Hadley a while ago, and before Hadley played Test cricket for New Zealand, we'd barely won a test. It was sort of that, and now with on the back of Southee, Bolt, Wagner, and the fantastic batting lineup led by Kane that we've had over the past, basically all of Southee's career. Now Southee's almost won 50% of his games that he's played. Not quite. Maybe it's around 40% or something. But that's the sort of level that someone like him has been able to lift us up to. And I think Binksy, without knowing the specifics of all of the people, I guess, that are now sort of saying this is when I'm going to retire, I'm pleased that we're getting this opportunity to I guess say goodbye to Tim Southee, and for him to go out. Well, who knows if he's going out on his own terms. I mean, obviously Neil Wagner's book's just come out, fantastic read. I would recommend that to anyone. And we've seen that he wasn't able to go out on his own terms. We wondered that at the time when we saw the announcement. But Southee, if you read what he said in the press conference and when he was talking, it sounds like he's thinking, this is now the time for me to step away from Test cricket. Although, interesting enough, he's still, going to be involved in domestic cricket and franchise cricket from the sounds of things. But there was so much sort of negativity towards him, and in the last 12 months, a surprising amount, I think, that was directed towards him because of, I think, when people started seeing Will O'Rourke come through, when Ben Sears performed so well against Australia in that test at Christchurch, that people were starting to go, we want to see this new crop of bowlers come through. We think that they're around. I do think that, you take Tim Southee out of that mix, and suddenly a lot of pressure now goes on Matt Henry to be the leader of that attack, with the likes of Sears and Jameson having these injuries, with O'Rourke's only just new to Test cricket, leading on to the England stuff. We're going to see a debut, I would have thought, from either Nathan Smith or Jacob Duffy in this England series. So you take Tim Southee out of that mix for the following series that we play, which admittedly, if we don't make the World Test Championship final, will be a long time away. We have the home summer test. This is our only test series this summer against England. Then we go to the Champions Trophy. Then it's all white ball stuff. And then I don't think we play a test again until maybe July or August, in a couple of tests in Zimbabwe, where we might end up playing a few spinners anyway. So, I think that in terms of a transition time from Test cricket, it probably is a good one to do. And I think it's wonderful that hopefully selection, if we, he's got to be in the side to start with, because Santner's coming in to the side for the second and third tests. It's a good opportunity for Southee to be honoured, and for him to leave the test arena where he's, so many fantastic memories for New Zealand, and so many New Zealanders have fantastic memories of him, in a positive way, hopefully with a strong performance. If he can get 400 wickets, then New Zealand's probably had a good series. And so, yeah, hopefully that'll happen.
Before we leave the series, I know, Stu, you just wanted to briefly touch on the fact we mentioned we'll do a preview of this series next week on the podcast, but your squad's out, so we know that we've definitely got, almost definitely got a debut, unless there's a strange set of combinations that you go with.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it looks like it looks like we're going to see either Nathan Smith, who I think probably has the edge, purely because he could probably bat at 8 and be the all-rounder in that lineup. It's certainly in the first test at Hagley where, we haven't even picked a frontline spinner unless you're regarding Glenn Phillips as a frontline spinner now. Mitchell Santner has come in for the second and third tests. So, a couple of weeks ago we were going, well, maybe they should get the fans out and kind of prepare some spin-friendly wickets. It doesn't seem like that's on the cards certainly for Hagley. But yeah, I mean, either Nathan Smith or Jacob Duffy, if they're going to go in with four seamers, then we're looking at Southee, Henry, O'Rourke, and one of those two to make a debut in that series. So yeah, very exciting for those guys. I think it'll mean, like we said last week, I think it'll mean Ajaz, Santner, and Will Young, the heroes really from that India series, that we won't see any of those three, at least in that first test at Hagley. And it's so, I really feel for Ajaz. I mean, I've had a little bit to do with him over the years. Super guy, and he's nearly got 100 test wickets, and he's going to go down. At least statistically, he's probably, I think he might be second. Maybe no, John Bracewell I think is ahead of him in terms of spin wickets for New Zealand, behind Vittori, who's way out in front. But he might get to 100 test wickets and not have a test wicket at home. So it's a real shame that he doesn't get the opportunity to play these games after the way things have played out. But I suppose, our normal style and seam-friendly wickets, that's the formula that's worked. And we need someone to bat 8 probably in that lineup. And unfortunately, Ajaz can't do that.
Let's stick with New Zealand then, Stu. We've got white ball cricket against Sri Lanka. I've got to admit, it's pretty hard to keep up with all these series at the moment, particularly with a number of teams not fielding probably what you would say would be their first 11s in these, given the schedule, so to speak. But anything particularly caught your eye? We're certainly not going to propose this is a game by game on the various white ball stuff that's going on around the world. Otherwise, we'll be here all night.
There hasn't really been, to be honest. It was great to see New Zealand bounce back in that second T20 and tie that series. The spinners came through. Glenn Phillips taking 3 wickets in the final over to get us across the line and draw that series. Then the first one day was totally dominated by the Sri Lankan batters. Kusal Mendis, great knock, 143, and a tough introduction to international cricket there, really for Nathan Smith to make his debut. I was encouraged to see him kind of clocking it up near 140 and touch over, on a regular basis. So that was exciting to see, but did get hit around a little bit. I'm actually going to deviate. You gave me a little bit of New Zealand time, and I'm going to deviate from the series because there's another game about to play, and just simply give a shout out to a friend of the podcast, Frankie Mackay, who over the weekend became the List A record holder in New Zealand, leading run scorer in domestic cricket in our 50-over game, to go alongside the leading wicket taker for in New Zealand domestic women's cricket as well. So just fantastic for, what a servant of the game here in New Zealand. Now we see her on commentary, and we've seen her in the black shirt, and she would have been more thrilled than anyone with the way that world, the T20 World Cup played out. So yeah, just very, very impressive, and for someone who's given a lot to the game here in New Zealand.
Fantastic. Bordy, do we want to cover a bit of Australia white ball stuff? What have you seen of Australia, Pakistan?
I think the overriding theme that has come out of that Australia-Pakistan series is that Australia have continued to struggle against high-quality fast bowling. And we spoke about that a little bit in the India preview series, the Border Gavaskar preview series that'll be on your channel, in your feed, somewhere around where we are here, either up or down, as is your preference. Go and have a look at that one, because it is an enjoyable hour of content. The overarching thing for me is that Australia don't have the depth that we think we do in terms of our white ball setup. We still have questions about our top order, but I think most of those are asked because Pakistan have showed up with a very high quality pace battery, and that pace battery has done a terrific job for them in terms of getting their pace bowlers back into form. Would we ever see Charlie Shaheen? Would we ever see Naseem Shah back again? Certainly this series has answered the question of can they perform at the international level? Absolutely they can. So Australia have continued to struggle with that fast bowling. I think the other thing that has come to the fore for me is Australia's fielding, and their catching in particular has not been up to standard in that white ball team for some time. And I think it is a real bellwether metric for Australia as whether they go well in big international tournaments. If we look forward to the Champions Trophy now in next February, we don't have any warm-up games as far as I'm aware between now and then. We have to fix our fielding standards between now and when the Champions Trophy kicks off, because Australia did not catch well in that series. Adam Zampa is one of the key contributors to that. He has had patches where he's been really good. He has had patches where he's had the dropsies, and he can't afford to have that in tournament play in that Champions Trophy.
Great new haircut though, with looking like Colin Miller with the shaved head and the bleach blonde.
Not commenting on Adam Zampa's haircut, not commenting on any Australian cricket hair in this week in cricket at all.
Pakistan's catching was actually dreadful in the game that I watched last night. We're recording this on Sunday night New Zealand time. Saturday was game 2, I think, of the T20 series. Pakistan's was absolutely horrendous. And I will just say that, you mentioned that the fast bowlers, I really like the look of Sufyan yesterday for Pakistan. I thought he did it, he looked really, really nice with the way that ball was coming out for him. So someone I hadn't seen before, someone I'll be looking out for in the future. Binksy, what about you? You didn't have much. West Indies, England hadn't taken, much of your interest last week. Is it much the same? It looks like England certainly know how to play T20 cricket better than they do the 50 over stuff at the moment.
Yeah, so look, it's been a move to the shorter form, and kind of back to winning ways for England. Although they got turned over last night. West Indies chasing down a record 200 and something, which looked like they were going to do it a canter until there was a Rayan Ahmed over with three wickets in it, two for him and a run out, which did threaten to at least spoil the chase for West Indies. The thing that's really stood out for me across the course of this series is the top order for that England's, the whole batting lineup really for that England T20 side has started to fire. Phil Salt, Joss Buttler in a new role, not taking the gloves anymore in T20 cricket, which caused a bit of conjecture, I think, in the British media at least. And then Will Jacks going really, really well. And then contributions, the one to watch, Jacob Bethell, so young Warwickshire lad. He's in the test squad as well for the tour of New Zealand. So they really, really like him. And I think he's going to be one of these guys that when you look at his stats, I think he averages something like 25 in a relatively short first-class career so far. But let's make no bones about it. He looks box office, and I think we'll see him in that sort of 3 format conversation very, very quickly. And then the other one that I really, really like is Saqib Mahmood. He's had a number of injuries. He is sharp. He does a little bit with it. Again, I see him as another person that could really get into the conversation for the Ashes down under. He's got a little bit of pace. I can see him being, again, a 3 format cricketer for England. So plenty to like in that T20 squad for England. And dead rubber game, 5th game coming up, I think, tomorrow. But it's been nicer to watch this than the ODIs as an English fan. That's for shizzle, as they say in Compton.
The only other white ball stuff, or at least games going on at the moment, that I thought worth mentioning is just India's, it's India's second team, although actually their T20 side has broken away and become more of a frontline side to their test, their test side and their T20 side. I think there are fewer crossovers perhaps than any other side in the world. And, with the way that they've gone about this series against South Africa, with Tilak Varma and Sanju Samson scoring 200s each, Tilak Varma, getting back-to-back unbeaten centuries in a T20 game, them smashing records all over the place. Sanju Samson's had 100, duck, 100 in the series. So, we talked about rocks and diamonds in the last episode that we just had just recorded. Sanju Samson, the shining light of that, but, someone I've always loved watching bat and the way they go about things. And just... I thought it was worth mentioning that India are 24-2 in T20s, T20 ODI, T20 internationals this season, which is just remarkable when you think about how variable that game can be for them to have won 24 out of their 26 games. It's we were about to probably transition quickly into the Champions Trophy. If they are in it, then you would think that they're going to be a real, a favourite again for any white ball tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's transition and talk then about the Champions Trophy. We tend to try and avoid too much political chat on the pod and prefer to concentrate on the field stuff. But I think we've got to talk about what's going on here from a political perspective. But Baldy, have you got an explainer planned for us?
I don't have it planned. I think it's a very, very murky set of waters to be wading into, particularly with the long history of political background between these two nations that have impacted their ability to play sport against each other over many, many years. I think the challenge at the moment, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, fellas, is that the Indian government has advised that travel to Pakistan is not on the cards. And so India have advised Pakistan that they're unable to travel to Pakistan for the trophy. And that means that there are a whole bunch of other potential, backup contingency plans that people are trying to work through to get this tournament on that make it very, very difficult, given that India aren't going to go and play in Pakistan in that tournament. So I think that is the complicating factor in a nutshell. But there's just so much to unpack here, both historically and from how do we get this tournament to go now?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's just sad, isn't it? It's just sad when you see politics, getting into sport, and like you said, we don't want to dive into, who's in the right and who's in the wrong here. It's not a good. It's an unfortunate situation, and I think that the reality is it's one we're going to have to watch because India is such an important cog in the cricket scene. It's such a the games between India and Pakistan are always so. They're always, at least, I mean, I'm sure for fans of both of those two teams, they're ones that they look forward to a lot in those major tournaments because they don't see them outside of the major tournaments. And for a neutral, they're always fascinating games to watch. And I think the concerning thing, if you're just looking at from an overall tournament perspective, is you're sort of waiting for who's going to budge here because the BCCI, like you said, have said that, travel has not been advised to Pakistan, that will not be happening. And the PCB have said, well, we don't want to have a contingency plan where any games are played outside of Pakistan. It's even affecting the Champions Trophy, the actual trophy tour at the moment, not being able to go into various parts of that area. So, I think it's a wait and see. And, there's contingencies that involve playing some of those games in various parts of the world. We just saw the Women's World Cup move, T20 World Cup move to the UAE from Bangladesh. So, this is not an isolated incident. Unfortunately, the world is, lots of regions of the world are in unfortunate circumstances at the moment. And this is just one we're going to have to watch over the coming months.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is the ICC really need to step in, don't they? They are the governing body. They may not be the most important governing body in the game. That might be the BCCI, but I think obviously the PCB have gone to the ICC asking them to explain why this can't happen in neutral language. Look, it's a real shame because it detracts from the fact that Pakistan, and we talk about it quite a lot. We had Wasim Khan on the podcast a while ago now, talking about what he had done in that role as general manager of the PCB or managing director. I don't know what the exact title was, And you kind of look at the fact that Test cricket's returned there. You know, England have gone back there, Australia have gone back there. I'm not suggesting that the political situation there is as complex as it is with India and Pakistan. But you've really got to hope that, you know, we can get to a stage where, from a sporting perspective, we're talking about the sport rather than talking about the politics, and certainly. Understand, you know, that there may be some safety concerns, etc., from India and the BCCI about their players travelling there. But you've got to kind of look at the fact when the BCCI are objecting to the route that a trophy will take. It seems to be more of a sort of strong arm from a political perspective than really the concerns that I think that we don't want to see dominating the media and dominating the press. We want to see the cricket doing that. And I'm sure if you ask Pakistan and India fans, they would want to see those two teams go toe to toe in India and in Pakistan, so that, you know, they can settle who's got the bragging rights, because, you know, that's ultimately what a sports fan wants to be able to do.
Absolutely. The last thing we want is for part of that tournament to not go ahead, or for teams to not be playing each other because of those situations. We've seen that before in major tournaments.
We saw it in Zimbabwe, South Africa, didn't we, in the World Cup?
Absolutely.
What was it, 2003, I think? Yeah.
Exactly. And we don't want to see a repeat of those scenarios. So let's hope that cooler heads in the governing bodies, all three of them as a triumvirate, come together and come to a conclusion that means that we can have a successfully run tournament in Pakistan, even if it means some part of that tournament happens somehow that allows each team to play each other that needs to as part of that tournament. I'm choosing my words really, really carefully, but what we want as cricket fans is for that tournament to go ahead in full, even if it means we have to, you know, make things happen along the way.
Yeah, 100%. And for listeners and viewers, I think we're coming at it from a cricketing perspective. I think everybody would agree it's equitable that you're able to play in your home country when you're hosting a tournament against all comers, and that, you know, the integrity of the cricket on the field is the most important thing. We can't comment on the political stuff. We don't know enough about the background of that. But purely from a cricketing perspective, hope this can get sorted out so that when we're looking at this, this tournament, it's got the integrity and the gravitas as a showpiece ICC event that it needs and that it deserves. We'll end the podcast, I think, on that somber note, but we will be back in your feed next week, where we will cover in a bit more detail that New Zealand versus England Test series coming up. I believe the England team are on the stag do component of it currently. They're down in Queenstown, I believe, because they want to get acclimatised as closely as possible to New Zealand conditions. So, a bit of skiing and luging and golfing is probably the best option for them. I'm sure there might be the odd glass of Pinot Noir down there as well for the England boys and their Kiwi-born coach. But we'll be back in your podcast feed to discuss that next week on the Top Order podcast. But for now, it is good morning and good bless from here in the UK, and good night and good bless from the guys at Baldwin's Bar in Auckland. We will see you next week. Good night.